You're listening to the Yin and Yang Show, a marketing and sales conversation with Lindsay Kelly and Brian Signorelli. Strategic and tactical advice about inbound sales and marketing.
Hi, and welcome back to the Yin and Yang Show. Thanks again for joining us for the Summer How-To Series here on the Yin and Yang Show. I'm Lindsay from Prospect Builder, joined as always by my HubSpot buddy, Sig.
Hey, Lindsay.
How you doing, Sig?
Good. So I was thinking,
better than 10 minutes ago when I asked
you. So much better than 10 minutes ago. It's amazing how I just swing back and forth like that. It's an emotional roller coaster, I guess I ride. I was thinking about these 3 closing techniques, and you know what? I decided for the sake of keeping it to about 10 minutes and for a little bit of a cliffhanger for our listeners, I'm only gonna do 2. Yeah, so I'm gonna hold one back. The one that I'm gonna hold back is called the inoffensive close, which a little bit mysterious. But what I'm gonna do today, I'm gonna talk through 2 things. The 2 closing techniques. One is technically not a closing technique, but the first is called the perfect close, and then the second, some people may be familiar with this. It's called the 1 to 10 closing technique. Could also call it like the 10-point closing technique, and I'll walk through those briefly. So I think one of the most common things I see any sales rep have problems with is basically knowing how to ask for the order. I think that the most experienced sales reps that have been doing this for 10, 15, 20 years are generally really, really, really good at this. They know how to ask somebody the order. They are comfortable with it. They know how to have that conversation in a way that doesn't make anybody feel uncomfortable or doesn't feel unnatural. But I think people in their first, especially their first few years of selling, maybe, or depending if you've switched different types of sales roles, or maybe you've moved from kind of like account-based selling and like upsells into kind of maybe a hunter role, any type of that switch, I think that closing is still difficult. It is not necessarily a natural conversation people have every single day. I mean, it's very different from kind of just doing an exploratory call and kind of learning more about a business and being curious. So anyway, I thought I'd talk a little bit about closing and some techniques that work for me. So the first one I mentioned, which is the perfect close. Like I said, this is not really a close. It's just that when you have run a perfect or near perfect sales process, there really is no close at all. And in fact, what happens is that the prospect is asking you, the salesperson, how they can get started and what the next steps are. I definitely didn't have this happen every time that I was a sales rep. It does not happen all the time. There's no magic, way to force this to happen. But basically, the higher the quality of the sales process, the close is kind of the natural conclusion or the natural progression of an implementation of a plan that you've been talking about for some period of time, or a way to address, goals or get to goals or overcome challenges, so on and so forth. So basically, the way that you've run a perfect sale is that there is really no negotiation, or there still may be negotiation, but really there's no close. There's no like, okay, so we're ready to get started. Instead, the prospect says to you, I am ready to get started. How do I get started with you? How do we start doing this together? That's the perfect close. Now, the 1 to 10 closing technique is a little bit different. Or again, you could call it the 10-point technique. Now, if you've gone through HubSpot's inbound sales methodology training, you should be familiar with this as part of that methodology training. But this is a technique that was taught to me by one of our former VPs of sales, Pete Caputa, and by one of his proteges, a woman named Danielle Hertzberg, who's now a director of business development at Slack. Actually, she just started there recently. Yes,
love me some Slack.
Yes, as I do too. So she just started at Slack this summer after she finished her MBA. So anyway, so this is how the 1 to 10 technique works. Basically, at the end of kind of your exploration, when you feel like you kind of covered everything, who the decision makers are, what the process looks like, you covered budget, goals, challenges, everything. If the prospect still isn't quite there yet, one of the ways to kind of prompt this conversation is to say, so Lindsay, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being we should end our call right now and maybe never talk to each other again. Whereas a 10 would be, I'm ready to get signed up right now and I'm ready to start working with you, Brian. Where would you say we are at this point?
Okay, and then they typically give you probably somewhere around a 7 or 8, right?
Yeah, so basically the point is it doesn't actually, so this is where it gets interesting. It doesn't actually matter which, I mean, don't get me wrong, it does matter which number they gave you, but the general rule of thumb is if they give you a 6 or lower, that means something went terribly wrong in your sales process. They should never be giving you a 6 or lower.
Okay.
And if they go below a 6 or lower, you should probably you should probably go back. Well, yeah, you should go back and kind of understand, okay, where did things break down? You should express, okay, it sounds like we clearly missed something. Like, lay it on me. Like, what did I miss? Like, what concerns haven't we gone through? What else is kind of going on that I can help with here to kind of, you got to kind of take a few steps back if the score is that low. But if they chose a 7, 8, or a 9, or a 10 for that matter, the next question you ask is, or the way I would coach someone to say this is to act surprised no matter what. And you say, so let's say you chose a 7, I would say, I'm surprised you chose a number that high, Lindsay. Why did you choose that number?
Oh, so you say number that high.
Yes, and exactly. This is all about word choice. So you say 7, and exactly to you and I, me and you, we'd say, oh, 7's like not that great. Like in the NPS world, that's neutral at best, right? But in this case, what you're trying to do is prompt them to say themselves what they like about your product, your service, your solution, whatever it is. So they're basically selling themselves on the benefits of working with you.
Okay.
Right? Then the next question is, after they've elaborated, and I'd say, well, I chose a 7 because, and again, the key is to say, why did you choose a number that high? And that triggers in their mind something positive where they're going to elaborate on benefits, right? So then once they elaborate on the benefits, then the next question you want to ask is, again, they've laid out their benefits. So like, okay, well, this is why I chose a 7. Like, I like this, I like that, I like this. Then you say, those sound like some pretty strong reasons to work together. And then basically paraphrase, their reasons back to them. And then this is where it kind of gets a little more complicated, where you'd say, but now, Lindsay, I'm even more confused. So you chose a 7, that's pretty high. You listed those reasons. Those reasons sound pretty compelling. So based on those reasons, I'm now wondering why you didn't tell me that your number was a 10. And what you're doing here is the prospect is going to elaborate on their objections and the concerns that they have. So it's basically the mirror image of the previous question you asked. So, you're saying, basically it's an indirect way of saying, tell me what you'd like about working with us. And then on the converse side, okay, great. Now I know your compelling reasons as you see them. Now tell me the reasons that you don't think that it's a good fit, right? Because if the number is not a 10, then there must be something that's holding them back. And then from there, you're basically just kind of addressing each one of those concerns. And after you've addressed the concerns, you kind of want to go back and ask, okay, so now that we've talked through issue 1 and 2, is your number now at a 10? Or has your number changed? You might not want to say 10. You'd probably say something to the effect of, has your number changed at all? And ideally, this person's number keeps moving higher and higher. You keep going through, addressing some of the hesitations and concerns, so on and so forth. And ultimately, what you're getting the prospect to do is state why working with you or why not working with you is the right decision. And the importance behind that is there is a psychological principle, which I firmly believe, which is that people believe what they say, but are resistant to what they hear. So you don't, as a sales rep, ever want to go through and say, well, I think you should work with us because of thing 1, 2, 3, and 4, because someone's naturally going to be resistant to that. Whereas if you can get the prospect that your potential customer you're working with to say it themselves, they are inherently going to believe it because they are the ones saying it. And I know it's a very nuanced kind of like, in your head type of thing. But it's actually quite effective. It's just something that takes a bit of practice. And I'd recommend doing a lot of role play with this, because if you don't do it naturally, it is going to sound scripted and it's going to fall flat on its face pretty quickly. So be careful with it.
That's pretty cool though. Awesome. Well, that was good. And that's a wonderful cliffhanger. And I'm not going to recap too much because that was 10 minutes and that was a really nice snippet. I loved that. So
Good.
3 closing techniques, the perfect close, the 1 through 10 closing technique. And then we're next week going to be examining the, what is it?
The inoffensive close.
Inoffensive close.
Mhm.
Can't read my own handwriting. Awesome. Well, fabulous. Guys, thank you again for listening in. I want to take a minute to say if you're enjoying this, I hope you are, then please join us for the Summer Inbound series. My company, Prospect Builder, is going to be doing a summer session starting July 25th, all online, Tuesdays throughout the rest of the summer for 1 hour. I'm going to teach you all about inbound sales, inbound marketing. I'm going to see if I can get Mr. Sig to join us for a Q&A session one day, maybe pop in at the end for 15 minutes. But check that out. Go to prospectbuilder.net, and it's big and bold on our website, so you can't miss it. Hopefully you guys will see you there. But guys, find Brian Sig at Inbound Seller. Ask him questions about these things. He loves that. Don't ask me questions about these things. Ask me about marketing. But you can still tweet at me at LV Kelly, Kelly with an EY. And guys, until next time, keep the conversation going.
Yeah, keep talking.
You've been listening to the Yin and Yang Show, a marketing and sales conversation with Lindsay Kelly and Brian Signorelli. Join us online at yinandyang.fm.